The station hummed with quiet desperation, stood at the observation window, watching distant stars flicker and die. Each flash meant another world consumed by the swarm. Each silence meant billions of lives ended. "They're not going to last much longer," said softly beside him. She held a data tablet that showed red markers spreading across the galactic map like a disease. 5 species had already fallen. 3 more were fighting their final battles. Was 46 years old and had seen many things in his career as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, but he had never seen fear like this. The council chamber behind them was filled with representatives from 40 different species, and every single one of them looked terrified. "How many ships do they have left?" asked. "About 300. The destroyed over 1,000 in the last month alone." His voice shook slightly. She was young, only 28, and had joined the diplomatic corps believing she would help build bridges between species. Instead, she was watching civilizations burn. A crystalline being approached them. High Chancellor towered over both humans, its body made of transparent minerals that shifted colors with its emotions. Right now, those colors were dark purple and fear and despair. "Ambassador, the council is ready to hear proposals," said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Straightened his uniform and walked into the chamber. The circular room held representatives from every council species. Some were humanoid, some were not. Some breathed oxygen, others did not. But they all shared one thing now, the knowledge that they were losing. General, a massive reptilian creature with scales like armor plates, stood at the center displaying tactical maps. "The swarm operates as a hive mind," he explained, his voice a deep rumble. "They have no fear, no hesitation, and no mercy. They consume everything organic and move to the next target. Our conventional warfare strategies are failing." "We need new tactics," a bird-like delegate chirped from across the room. "New weapons, new strategies." "We need more ships," another added. "We need help," someone else said quietly. Raised his hand. The room fell silent. Everyone knew humans were the members of the Galactic Council. Earth had only joined 50 years ago. Most species still saw humans as primitive newcomers who barely understood space travel. "Earth offers its full military support," said clearly. "We have 7,000 warships ready to deploy. We have soldiers trained and willing to fight. We have weapons and technology that might give us an edge against The silence stretched. Then High Chancellor made a sound like breaking glass. "That is impossible," said. "Why?" asked. "We're members of the Council. We have the right to participate in collective defense." "You do not understand, Ambassador. Humanity cannot participate in this war. Humanity cannot participate in any war beyond your own solar system." Stepped forward. "What are you talking about? There's no rule like that in the Council Charter." General scales darkened. "There is," Protocol 7 read. "It was established 600 years ago." 600 years ago. Mind raced. That was 200 years before Earth even made first contact with any of you. How could there be a protocol about us before you knew we existed? The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Delegates turned to each other, whispering urgently, raised several crystalline arms for silence. "The protocol exists for good reasons, Ambassador. Reasons that were determined long ago by those wiser than us." "People are dying," said, his voice hard. "Right now, while we talk, and you're telling me you won't accept Earth's help because of some rule that doesn't make sense." "The rule makes perfect sense," General growled. "You simply do not know why yet." "Then tell me why." His colors shifted to deep red, anger mixed with fear. "Because 600 years ago, the precursors left us warnings about various species in the galaxy, species that posed extreme dangers. Humanity was on that list, Ambassador. You were marked as too dangerous to ever allow into galactic warfare." The words hit like a physical blow. Grabbed his arm, steadying herself as much as him. That's insane, said. The precursors never even met humans. We were still using wooden ships when they disappeared. How could they warn you about us? We do not know, admitted. But the warnings about every other species on their list proved accurate. 3 of those species had to be contained or destroyed. We do not take precursor warnings lightly. Another alert sounded. The tactical display updated. Another world had gone dark. So you'll let billions die rather than risk letting humans fight. His voice trembled with rage. That's your decision. It is the Council's decision, made long before any of us held these positions, said. I am sorry, truly, but Protocol 7 Red cannot be overturned, especially not during a crisis. Wanted to argue more. He wanted to demand answers, but General was already moving on to other strategies, and the moment was lost. Outside the chamber paced back and forth like a caged animal. This is wrong. This is completely wrong. How can they not accept help when they're losing? They're scared, said quietly. He was thinking fast, processing everything. They're more scared of us than they are of the. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't it? Looked at her. Think about it. They are destroying them, yes, but they are a known quantity, a hive mind that consumes and moves on. The Council understands them even if they can't beat them, but us. They don't understand us at all, and that scares them more than death. Stop packing. What do we do? You're going to find out why Protocol 7 Red exists. Find out what the precursors said about us. Find out why we were blacklisted before anyone even knew we existed. And what will you do? I'm going to keep trying to change their minds, because that list is getting longer. He pointed at the display showing lost worlds. And eventually, they will reach Earth. When that happens, protocol or no protocol, humanity is going to fight. Nodded and hurried away. Returned to the observation window. Another star flickered and died in the distance. He touched his communication device. To Earth Command, begin quiet preparations. I want our fleets ready to move, authorization or not. Sir, that would be a direct violation of Council law, the voice on the other end said. I know, do it anyway, because I think we're going to need those ships very soon. He watched the darkness spread across the galaxy and wondered what the ancient precursors had seen in humanity that scared them so much. What had they known that the Council was too afraid to share? The answer suspected would change everything. Had never broken the law before. She had always been the responsible one, the one who followed rules and trusted the system. But watching worlds die while the Council refused help had changed something inside her. You're sure about this? Asked through the encrypted channel. Her brother worked for Earth Intelligence back in Seoul. He had access to systems she could only dream about. I'm sure. Can you get into their database or not? I can get in. Whether I can get out without being caught is another question. She heard him typing rapidly. What exactly am I looking for? Anything about Protocol 7 Red. Anything about precursor warnings. Anything that explains why humanity was blacklisted 600 years ago. 3 more days had passed since the Council meeting. 3 more worlds had fallen to the swarm. Was in constant meetings, trying to convince the Council to reconsider. So far, he had convinced exactly no one. Got something, said. Heavily redacted files. They're labeled as precursor archives, subsection human question. Want me to crack them? Yes, send everything you find to my secure tablet. While worked his magic across light years of space, reached out to another contact. Doctor was a who studied dead civilizations. She had published 12 papers on precursor technology and culture. If anyone could help interpret ancient warnings, it was her. They met in a quiet cafe on the station's residential level. Was older than maybe 50, with streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many dead worlds. You're asking dangerous questions, said after explained what she needed. People are dying. I need to understand why the Council won't let us help. Stirred her tea slowly. The precursors left warnings about 13 species. I've studied all of them. 3 species were marked as hive minds that would consume everything. The Council destroyed those species when they were found. 4 species were marked as aggressive expansionists. They were contained to their home systems. 2 species were marked as reality manipulators. They disappeared before the Council could act. And the others? One was marked as a plague carrier. One was marked as a dimensional threat. One was marked as too curious for its own good. And one, paused, was marked simply as apex predator. That one was humanity. Felt cold. Apex predator, that's all it said. That's all I was allowed to see. The full file is classified at the highest level. Only Council leadership can access it. Why? Because apparently, the precursors didn't just warn about what humanity was. They warned about what humanity could become. Tablet buzzed, had sent the files. She opened them quickly, scanning through layers of text. Most of it was corrupted or redacted, but pieces remained. Coordinates, dates, and one phrase that repeated over and over: do not engage in conflict. I need to see the original precursor station where this was found, said suddenly. That's impossible. It's in restricted space and you don't have authorization. Then I need someone who does. That's how found herself standing outside Archivist's door at 3 in the morning. Was old, even by alien standards. He had been maintaining the Council's deepest vaults for over a century. If anyone knew the truth, it was him. The door opened, looked like a walking mushroom with a cap-like head and dozens of thin arms. His skin was spotted with age. I know why you're here, he said in a voice like rustling leaves. Come in quickly. His quarters were filled with data crystals and ancient texts. The walls were covered in symbols from 100 dead languages. You want to know about the human warning, said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Do you know what the precursors were? An ancient civilization that disappeared 10,000 years ago. They were more than that. They were predictors. They could see patterns in species development. They could predict what a species would become based on what it was, and they were never wrong. Move to a locked case and a crystal that glowed faint blue. This is the complete file. I could be executed for showing you this, but I'm old and I'm tired of watching people die because of fear. He placed the crystal in a reader. A hologram appeared, showing text in dozens of languages. The translation scrolled across the bottom. Species classification, Homo. Origin planet, Earth Sol system. Current development level, pre. Threat assessment, extreme. Recommendation, quarantine. Read further. The report was detailed, analyzing human history, human psychology, human warfare. But it was the conclusion that made her hands shake. This species must never know war beyond there. Their capacity for violence is not the danger. Every species has violence. The danger is their capacity for adaptation under pressure. They do not freeze when afraid. They do not flee when outmatched. They improvise. They learn. They find ways to win that should not exist. In simulations, this species wins conflicts against opponents 1,000 years more advanced through sheer desperation and creativity. They call it survival instinct. We call it apex predator behavior. If this species ever learns to apply this ability on a galactic scale, nothing will stop them. Not because they are evil, but because they refuse to accept defeat. The hologram continued. In our projections, humanity either destroys itself before reaching the stars, or becomes the dominant military force in the galaxy within 500 years of achieving faster-than-light travel. There is no middle outcome. Recommendation: if this species survives to reach the stars, never allow them to participate in warfare. Their learning curve is exponential. Each battle will teach them more than 1,000 battles teach others. They will adapt faster than any opponent can counter. The only way to maintain galactic peace is to ensure humanity never learns what it's truly capable of. Couldn't speak. She read the words again and again. "Do you understand now?" asked quietly. "The Council isn't afraid humanity will lose. They're afraid humanity will win, every time, against anyone. But we're not monsters. We don't want to conquer anyone." "No, but the precursors calculated that once humanity sees warfare on a galactic scale, once you understand how other species fight, you will develop strategies and tactics that will revolutionize combat, and that knowledge cannot be contained. So they'd rather die than let us fight. They'd rather die than create an unstoppable military power, because what happens after they are defeated? Who controls humanity then? Who stops you if you decide peace is no longer in your interest?" His tablet buzzed again. A message from 3 more systems lost. "Council is evacuating headquarters. We're out of time." She looked at, "What would you do?" The old archivist was quiet for a long moment. "I would remember that predictions are not destiny. The precursors could calculate what species might become, but they could not account for choice. Humanity has a choice. The question is whether the Council trusts you to make the right one." "Took the crystal. I need to show this to." "I know. That's why I gave it to you. Because sometimes the only way forward is through the fear, not around it." She ran back toward the diplomatic quarters, clutching the truth that might save billions or doom the galaxy. Station held 50 billion souls. It was the largest structure ever built by the Galactic Council, a massive ring of habitats and defense platforms orbiting a binary star system. It was also the Council's last real fortress. If fell, the war was over. The swarm arrived at dawn. Watch from the command center as thousands of ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They looked like locusts made of metal and chitin, swarming in perfect coordination. The hive mind controlled them all with ruthless efficiency. "Council fleet is moving to intercept," General reported. His voice was steady, but his scales had gone pale. 234 warships against approximately 4,000 vessels. "Those aren't good odds," whispered beside. "No, they're not." The battle began badly and got worse. Council ships were built for exploration and defense. They were built for consumption. For every ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. They didn't care about losses. The hive mind simply sent more. His communicator buzzed. It was Captain from the human ship Soul's Pride. 7 human vessels were in the system, officially present as observers. Unofficially, their weapons were armed and crews were ready. "Ambassador, permission to engage." Voice was tense. "The Council hasn't authorized our participation." "Sir, with respect, the Council is about to die, all of them." Looked at High Chancellor across the command center. The crystalline being's colors were flickering between red and black, pure terror. "Hold position, Captain, for now." He crossed to, "Chancellor, you need to lift Protocol 7 red, right now." "I cannot." 50 billion people are going to die if you don't. "And how many might die later if we do?" His voice cracked like breaking ice. "You showed me what the precursors said. You know what they predicted." "Predictions aren't destiny." Had said that to him just hours ago, sharing what she'd learned from Archivist. Another alert. 3 Council cruisers destroyed. They were pushing through the outer defense perimeter. An elderly alien approached them. Elder was a historian, one of the few Council members who had lived through the last major war 3 centuries ago. His species looked almost human, except for the silver skin and 3 eyes. "Perhaps it's time they knew the whole truth," said quietly. "Not the precursor predictions, the truth we witnessed ourselves." Turned all its sensory organs toward. "You would reveal the Theta incident." "If we're all about to die, what does secrecy matter anymore?" Felt tense beside him. "What incident?" Gestured to a holographic display. 600 years ago, before the Council even knew Earth existed, we encountered a human colony ship. It was called new, primitive by our standards. It was carrying 200 colonists to a new world using slower-than-light drives. The journey would take them 50 years. The hologram showed an old vessel, barely by modern standards. What happened to them? Asked. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Two alien species were at war with each other, fighting over resources. The human ship drifted into their battle zone. Three eyes looked haunted. Both warring sides decided to capture the primitive vessel. They thought it would be easy, a ship full of sleeping colonists with technology centuries behind theirs. The humans were in, asked. Most of them were. But the ship's emergency systems woke 40 crew members when the aliens started boarding. 40 humans with nothing but mining equipment and emergency supplies, against two military boarding parties, each numbering over 100 trained soldiers with advanced weapons. The command center was quiet now except for the distant sounds of battle. Everyone was listening. What did the humans do? His voice was barely a whisper. What they always do, said. They fought, but not like any species we'd ever seen fight before. The aliens expected them to surrender or retreat. Instead, the humans turned their mining equipment into weapons. They used their ship's maintenance tunnels as an advantage. They set traps. They ambushed patrols. The hologram showed tactical readouts from the alien forces. Within 2 hours, the humans had captured weapons from fallen aliens and learned how to use them. Within 4 hours, they had control of both boarding ships. By hour 6, they were piloting those ships against the fleets that sent them. 40 humans defeated 200 alien soldiers. Could barely believe it. 40 terrified humans who refused to let their families die. The alien commanders couldn't understand it. Humans showed every sign of fear on biological scans. Their heart rates were elevated, stress hormones were through the roof. They should have been paralyzed with terror. Instead, they weaponized that fear. They used it as fuel. The psychological analysis from both alien species said the same thing. Humans do not surrender when their survival is at stake. They adapt faster than any countermeasure can be developed. They find winning strategies that shouldn't exist. They were limited only by their technology and numbers, never by their will to survive. Another alert. They had breached the middle defense ring. The Council Observer Corps watched the whole thing happen, continued, and they realized something terrifying. Those 40 humans had no military training. They were miners, engineers, farmers, ordinary people, and they had defeated professional soldiers using nothing but desperation and creativity. The report concluded that if humans ever reached the stars with actual military training and modern weapons, they would become the dominant military force in the galaxy within a century. Not through aggression, but through simple superiority in combat. The recommendation was to avoid contact entirely. But you made contact anyway, said. We had to. You developed faster-than-light travel on your own. We couldn't hide from you forever, so we made Protocol 7 Red instead. We thought if we never let you fight, you'd never realize what you were capable of. Alarms blared. They had reached the inner ring. Station itself was under direct attack now. How long until they breached the station? Asked. 2 hours, General said, maybe less. Captain's voice came over the communicator again. Ambassador, we can watch them die or we can do what humans do. What are your orders? Looked at, Chancellor. The crystalline being's colors had gone completely dark. If I authorize this and you win, what then? What stops humanity from turning on us next? The same thing that's always stopped us, said. We choose not to. We've had nuclear weapons for 400 years. We could have destroyed ourselves 1,000 times over, but we chose peace instead. We're not perfect, but we're not the monsters you think we are. The precursors were never wrong, said softly. The precursors never met us. You have, for 50 years now. Have we ever given you reason to fear us? Another explosion rocked the station. People were screaming in the distance. Was silent for a long moment, then its colors shifted to pure white, decision. I don't have time to convene the full council. I'm making this choice alone. Protocol 7 Red is suspended. Humanity, you are authorized to engage. Touched his communicator. Captain, you are cleared to engage. Show them what humans do when people need help. Yes, sir. Soul's Pride and all human vessels are engaging now. Through the windows, 7 human ships dropped their observer status and dove into the battle. The war was about to change. The Soul's Pride was not the biggest ship in the battle. It was not the most powerful or the most advanced. But when Captain gave the order to engage, something changed in the way it moved. The ship stopped flying like an observer and started hunting like a predator. All weapons free, ordered. Tactical, I need target priorities. Engineering, I need everything you've got. Medical, prep for casualties. Minyu was young for a tactical officer, barely 25, but his mind worked like a quantum computer. He studied the formations for exactly 12 seconds before speaking. Captain, they're using swarm coordination. Every ship responds to every other ship in real time. It makes them efficient, but it also makes them predictable. They can't think independently. How does that help us? If we can disrupt their communication, even for a few seconds, they'll scatter. They won't know how to react. Make it happen. The Soul's Pride dove into the formation, weapons blazing. But it wasn't shooting to destroy. It was shooting to confuse. Missiles exploded in patterns that created sensor noise. Energy weapons fired at specific frequencies that jammed communications. The effect was immediate. 50 ships suddenly lost coordination. They bumped into each other and created gaps in their formation. All human vessels, this is Soul's Pride. We're sharing our tactical data. Target the gaps. 6 other human ships received Minyu's analysis and acted on it instantly. They didn't need to be told twice. They saw the openings and exploited them with ruthless efficiency. In the command center, General watched in disbelief. They've been in combat for 4 minutes and they've already identified a weakness we've been missing for months. That's what the precursors warned about, Elder said quietly. Humans don't just fight, they learn while fighting. Was the Soul's Pride's combat engineer. She had been designing weapons since she was a teenager. Now, watching the adapt to human tactics, she realized they needed something new. Captain, I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work. All our best ideas are crazy. What do you need? I need to rig our reactor to emit a false signal. If I can make it mimic a queen death signal, it might trigger their retreat instinct. How long will that take? 20 minutes, maybe less if I skip some safety protocols. Skip them, we don't have 20 minutes. Ran to the engine room, her mind already working through the modifications. The ship's reactor was powerful, but it wasn't designed to broadcast signals. She would have to essentially turn it into the galaxy's most dangerous radio transmitter. On another human vessel, the Rising Soul medical officer was preparing for something no council species had attempted. I need volunteers for a boarding action, she announced over the ship's intercom. Her captain stared at her. Boarding action. Against they're the size of bears with natural armor and weapons. I know, that's why we'll win. They won't expect it. Marine commander stepped forward. I'll take a team. How are we getting onto a ship? Pointed to a damaged escape pod. We're going to shoot ourselves at them like a missile. They'll think we're debris until it's too late. That's insane. Do you have a better idea? Grinned, no, I love it, let's go. 20 Marines climbed into the escape pod, sealed it from the outside and programmed the launch trajectory. Good luck, don't die. We're human, said through the communicator. Dying is optional. The pod launched. To sensors, it looked like wreckage from a destroyed ship. They ignored it completely, right up until it crashed through their hull and 20 armed humans came pouring out. They had never experienced close combat before. The hive mind controlled them perfectly for ship-to-ship warfare, But individual fighting was different. When a human appeared 3 feet away with a plasma rifle and absolute determination, the froze for a critical half-second. That was all needed. Move fast, shoot straight, and remember they're more scared of you than you are of them, he shouted, leading his team deeper into the ship. They weren't there to capture the vessel. They were there to disable it, had given them a map of ship designs based on the vessels the Council had analyzed. Find the coordination node, destroy it, get out. Easier said than done. They adapted quickly. They started coordinating melee attacks, but humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. Hand-to-hand combat was written into their DNA. "They're boxing us in," one Marine reported. "Then we go through them," said. He pulled a grenade from his belt. Fragmentation out. The explosion tore through the corridor. The Marines rushed forward through the smoke and chaos. They found the coordination node 10 minutes later. It looked like a massive brain made of crystal and living tissue, pulsing with bioluminescent signals. "That's disgusting," a Marine said. "That's our target," corrected. "Light it up." They fired everything they had into the node. It exploded in a shower of biological matter and energy. The ship immediately went dark. Extraction now. They fought their way back to the breach point and jumped back into space, trusting their suits to keep them alive long enough for pickup. Back on the Soul's Pride finished her modifications. "Captain, reactor is ready. Transmitting false Queen Death signal in 3, 2, 1 now." The ship's reactor pulsed with energy. It broadcast on frequencies no human ship should have been able to produce, but had always been good at making things do what they weren't supposed to do. 3 entire fleets, hundreds of ships, suddenly received a signal their instincts couldn't ignore. Queen Death, scatter, regroup, retreat. They turned and fled. In the command center, the tactical display updated. They were retreating from station. After months of unstoppable advance, they were running away. "What just happened?" asked, its colors flickering with confusion and hope. "Humans happened," General said, his voice filled with awe and something that might have been fear. 7 ships. 7 human ships did what 300 council vessels couldn't do. They turned the tide. Minu sent his final report to console. The numbers were staggering. In 16 hours of combat, human vessels had destroyed or disabled over 400 ships using tactics the Council had never considered. They had boarded enemy vessels directly. They had used psychological warfare against a hive mind. They had improvised weapons and strategies that shouldn't have worked but did anyway. 4 human ships had been destroyed. The crews went down fighting, buying time for others to escape. But 3 ships survived, including the Soul's Pride. Read the casualty reports. 2,000 humans dead, but 50 billion aliens saved. Captain's face appeared on the. He looked exhausted, covered in soot and blood. "Ambassador, mission accomplished. Station is secure. They are retreating to regroup." "Good work, Captain. All of you, come home." "Sir," expression was troubled. "Now that they've seen what we can do, what happens next?" Looked at, the Chancellor's colors had gone completely white again. Not fear this time, understanding. "Now," said slowly, "we find out if the Council trusts us with this responsibility." Stood beside him, watching the human ships return to dock. "The precursors were right," she said quietly. "We are apex predators in warfare. The question is, what do we do with that?" "We choose peace," said. "Like we always have. We just proved we can fight. Now we prove we don't have to." But as he watched the council delegates whisper nervously among themselves, he wondered if that would be enough. The council chamber was more crowded than had ever seen it. Every species that could send a representative had done so. Some delegates stood. Some floated. Some existed as energy fields or crystalline structures. But they all shared one thing. They were here to decide what to do about humanity. It had been 6 days since the Battle of Station. 6 days of endless debates, private meetings, and arguments that sometimes became heated enough to require security intervention. The galaxy had watched humans fight, and now everyone had an opinion. They saved us, one delegate argued. 50 billion lives would be gone without them. Today they saved us, another countered. Tomorrow they might conquer us. The precursors warned us for a reason. The precursors never met them, we have. And now we know the warnings were accurate. Sat in the human section with beside him. They had been called to testify 3 times. They had answered every question, showed every tactical recording, explained every decision. But still the debate raged. High Chancellor called for order, its crystalline body chiming like a bell. We have deliberated for 6 days. It is time to vote on the proposals before us. But first, Ambassador has requested to make a final statement. Stood, every eye, sensor and detection organ in the room focused on him. I'm not going to apologize for saving your lives, he began. I'm not going to pretend we didn't fight well because we did. And I'm not going to promise that humans will never fight again because that would be a lie. Every species in this room has the capacity for violence. We're no different. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. But here's what I will promise. Earth doesn't want your territories. We don't want to control you. We don't want an empire. We want what we've always wanted since we joined this council 50 years ago, to be part of something bigger than ourselves, to explore, to learn, to help. You saw what we can do in war, but that's not who we are. That's just what we're capable of when we have no other choice. He looked around the chamber. The precursors predicted we'd become a dominant military power. Maybe they were right, but they couldn't predict what we'd do with that power. They couldn't predict that we'd choose peace. How can we trust that choice? A delegate asked. Your own history is filled with wars. Yes, and we learned from every single one of them. We learned that war costs more than it gains. We learned that the strongest weapon isn't the one that destroys, it's the one you choose not to use. It took us thousands of years to learn that lesson, but we did learn it. Stood beside him. I've spent the last week studying the data from the battle. Do you know what I found? Every time human forces had the choice between destroying a ship and disabling it, they chose to disable. Every time they could kill or capture, they chose capture. Even in the heat of battle, they were thinking about what comes after. That's the choice the precursors couldn't account for, she continued. They calculated our capability for war, but capability isn't the same as desire. We can fight. That doesn't mean we want to. Elder rose from his seat. I was there 600 years ago when we encountered the new. I saw humans fight with a desperation that terrified us, but I also saw what happened after. When the fighting stopped, those 40 humans immediately began caring for the wounded, both human and alien wounded. They didn't execute their prisoners. They didn't seek revenge. They did what was necessary to survive, and then they chose mercy. I voted for Protocol 7 read back then. I thought we were protecting the galaxy. Now I realize we were protecting our own fear. We were afraid that if humanity knew what they were capable of, they would use it to dominate us. We never considered that they might know what they're capable of and choose peace anyway. The chamber was silent. General stood next. The massive reptilian commander's scales had returned to their normal color. I fought for 8 months and made no progress. 7 human ships fought for 16 hours and won. That's not luck. That's not technology. That's pure tactical and strategic superiority. But I also watched human commanders. They took risks no council commander would take because they valued other lives over their own. They sacrificed their ships to save stations full of aliens they'd never met. That's not the behavior of conquerors. That's the behavior of protectors. High Chancellor stood. We have 3 proposals before us. First, to expel humanity from the Council and quarantine them to their own system. Second, to maintain Protocol 7 Red and never allow human military action again. Third, to create a new protocol that acknowledges both humanity's capability and their choice. I will not lie to you, I am still afraid of what humanity might become, but I am more afraid of what we might become if we let fear control us. The precursors gave us warnings about 13 species. 3 we destroyed, 4 we imprisoned, 2 we never found. Humanity is the first one we chose to trust, and so far that trust has been rewarded. I support the third proposal, Protocol 7 Blue. The vote was called, held his breath as delegates triggered their voting systems. Lights appeared on the main display, green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstain. The counting took less than a minute. The result appeared on the screen. 47 yes, 3 no, 8 abstain. Protocol 7 Blue was approved. Read the new protocol aloud. Humanity is hereby granted full council membership rights, including military participation. However, human forces may only engage in warfare under the following conditions. First, when defending council member worlds from existential threats. Second, when requested by member worlds facing destruction. Third, when authorized by majority council vote. Furthermore, humanity is designated as guardians of last resort. When all other options have failed, human forces are authorized to act. In exchange, Earth agrees to share military training and defensive strategies with all council species. Finally, this council acknowledges that any species that attacks humanity without provocation will face the full defensive might of the council, because we will not risk discovering what humanity does when fighting for their own survival rather than others. Felt grab his hand. They had done it, not a perfect solution but a real one. After the session ended, approached them privately. The Chancellor's colors were calm now, pale blue and green. I wanted to tell you something, Ambassador, off the record. Of course. We barred you from war not because we feared you would lose. We feared you would win. Every time, against anyone, including us. And we feared what would happen to the galaxy if there was a species no one could defeat. But I realize now that the precursors made one error in their calculations. They measured capability but ignored character. Yes, humanity is the apex predator of the battlefield. But you're also the species that chooses to be more than that. You choose to be guardians instead of conquerors, and that's rarer than any military advantage. Bowed slightly. We'll do our best to prove you right, Chancellor. You already have. 3 weeks later and stood on the observation deck of station, watching human ships patrol the restored defense perimeter. They weren't there as threats. They were there as protectors. Captain's voice came over the communicator, escorting a convoy of refugee ships to safety. The radio chatter was filled with grateful voices in a dozen different languages. Do you think they'll ever really trust us? Asked. Trust isn't given all at once. It's earned over time. We showed them what we can do in war. Now we show them who we are in peace. And if they come back, then we'll be ready, but this time we won't be alone. Far away, in the deep archives, Archivist filed the final report on the Battle of Station. At the bottom, he added a personal note that would remain sealed for 1,000 years. The precursors were correct. Humanity is the apex predator of warfare. But they were also wrong, because the most dangerous thing about humans isn't their capacity for violence. It's their capacity to choose peace despite that violence. Today, we learned that the species we feared most might be the species that saves us all. Not because they're the best at war, but because they understand what war costs and choose to prevent it whenever possible. The precursors saw humanity's potential for destruction. We are the first to see their potential for protection. May we be wise enough to nurture the latter and trust them not to become the former. Above station, a new star flickered to life. Not the death of a world, but the birth of one. The galaxy was rebuilding, and this time humanity would help guard it. Not as conquerors, as the guardians they chose to be.